proposed revisions that always seem to involve less respect for the rights of free nations and less freedom for the individual. These matters would be difficult under any circumstances. They are further complicated by a trend in Western countries away from global engagement and democratic confidence. Parts of Europe have developed an identity crisis. We have seen insolvency, economic stagnation, youth unemployment, anger about immigration, resurgent ethno-nationalism, and deep questions about the meaning and durability of the European Union. America is not immune from these trends. In recent decades, public confidence in our institutions has declined. Our governing class has often been paralyzed. The American dream of upward mobility seems out of reach for some who feel left behind in a changing economy. Bigotry seems emboldened. Politics seems more vulnerable to conspiracy theories and outright fabrication.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us?
Not much, because it's a secret.
Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code?
I wish there were something secret I could manifest.
322, a secret number?
There are all kinds of secrets.
Now, as you may know, my running mate, Tim, is Catholic and went to Jesuit schools. And one of the things he and I have talked about is this idea from the Jesuits of the Magus, the more, the better.
Hello, YouTube. This is Brett Norman. Today we have a special reading of Codeword Barbelon. We are on chapter 46, Mark of Cain, the Mark of Rome, and the Da Vinci Code. And this chapter is special because Jörg Lissman, when we started out in the beginning of this book, had noted that he was really looking forward to reading this chapter. And I'm really looking forward to hearing you read it, Jörg. So welcome very, very much to the broadcast today.
Thank you, Brett. The subject of the Mark of Cain is so interesting to me also because I read this, of course, as a chapter with the same name in the book Rulers of Evil from F. Tapasauci. Now, I don't have that book here in front of me right now, but that's no problem. But I thought that was a very, very interesting little chapter at the end of the book Rulers of Evil. And the interesting thing, of course, is, Brett, that Rulers of Evil starts with the same quote in I think it is chapter 23 of the book of Rulers of Evil.
Wow.
And it starts with the same quote that we read here from Pope John the 23rd. By the way, John the 23rd is a name of a pope that has been given already earlier. And that one was disposed of at the Council of Constance, the council in between 1414 and 1417, the council where Jan Hus was executed by the Roman Catholic Church for heresy. And during that council, 3 popes were deposed of, and one pope survived, and he came out as the ruling pope after that. That was kind of a quote-unquote schism they had within the Roman Catholic Church. And that is also the reason why Pope, if I'm not mistaken, who was it? Who was the Pope at the time of Martin Luther?
Oh, Pope
Leo X.
Leo X.
Leo X. When Leo X was always hesitating to call for a council, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to learn more about that, I advise you to go to First Amendment Radio, to the archives of, I think it was beginning this year or the end of last year, 2017, when Tom Friess was reading Martin Luther on the councils and the church. That is the part of the book of Martin Luther's works that preceded the work of the papacy. What's it called again? An institution of the devil, you know,
yes.
Martin Luther,
the Roman papacy, an institution of the devil. Yeah,
thanks. Yeah,
against the Roman papacy. That's what it is.
Against the Roman papacy, an institution of the devil.
Papacy, yeah.
That is the book that Martin Luther wrote against the papacy as his legacy in 1545, before he died, about a year later. Just I think, a month in the Council of Trent when that finally came. Martin Luther advocated all his life for a council. I mean, he could advocate as much as he wanted. He was living under the church ban. He was excommunicated. He was free to be killed by everybody. That's why he never appeared on official scenes. That's why you don't see him in Augsburg at the Augsburg Confession. That's why you don't see him at the Diet of Spires. He was always hiding because he was living under the church ban. I mean, people have to understand that that guy was excommunicated in 1520 and he lived until 1546. Beginning of 1546. He survived in that times 46 years all the hunters of the Pope that were out there to kill him anyway. And he wrote a book on the council and the churches where he was advocating a free Christian and German council. And the Pope just didn't want to give it to him because he had very bad experiences with the Council of Constance in the beginning of the 15th century, as I just said, where 3 popes were deposed of. And 2 of them were even killed. So, of course, Leo X was not in favor of granting Luther or anyone a council where he could maybe be put aside with,
Right. Yep.
So, there also was one pope there that was called John the 23rd. So this name was taken twice in the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah, to my knowledge,
Yep.
to my
right.
knowledge, it's the only name of a pope that has been given twice to a pope. And the quote that we are reading here on the beginning of page 461, the beginning of chapter 46, Mark of Cain, the Mark of Rome, and the Da Vinci Code by P.D. Stewart, the quote that we read here from Pope John the 23rd is made in 1960, very close to the opening of the Second Vatican Council that opened in the end of 1962. But you wanted to say something there, Brad. I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just going to clarify that wasn't that papal bull of excommunication delivered to Martin Luther in 1520?
Yes, I told you. He
Yep,
was
1520
excommunicated in
to
1520.
1545, 46 is when he lived to, right?
In
Martin
March,
Luther. Yeah, that's right.
end of February, and during the month of February, I think, in 1546, he died. And that bull of excommunication, I made an own video on that. You can look that up in my book reading on Against the Papacy, an Institution of the Devil. I made an extra video in there that is called Exsurge Domini, the bull of excommunication for Martin Luther. You can look that up and have a look at it. Exsurge Domini was the name of the...
Very provocative period of time in Europe, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
A lot of things going on at that time. And, at that time, I think it was much easier for people to realize that the papacy is the Antichrist. As today, it's not that easy, is it? Doesn't appear to be.
No, well, that's true. Now, what is Antichrist Pope John the 23rd in 1960 saying? What's the quote? "The mark of Cain is stamped upon our foreheads. Across the centuries our brother Abel has lain in blood, which we drew, and shed tears we caused by forgetting thy love." And there's even a dispute, of course, if this quote was actually made by Pope John the 23rd. It is said that this quote was done during a prayer that he did, and I don't know how reliable the sources are, but it is at least something that appears in Rulers of Evil. And after the publishing of Rulers of Evil, the publishing of this book, Codeword Barbelon, came. So I don't know if the author, P.D. Stewart, just took the quote out of Rulers of Evil, or he did his own research on that. I don't care. Anyway, I don't even care if it is legitimate that the Pope said it or not. If he didn't say it, it still is true.
Yeah,
that's
right.
That's the point about it. The mark of Cain is stamped upon our foreheads. Across the centuries or the millennia, our brother Abel has lain in blood, which we drew, and shed tears we caused by forgetting thy love, the love of God. They forgot the love of God because they don't even venerate the God of the Bible. Yeah.
And they know
And
it.
yeah, and they know it, and they admit
know.
it.
Yes.
And whether they admit it like they do here, whether this is now a true quote or it's not a true quote, the content of the quote is true. Whether the Pope said it or not, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Incredible, isn't it?
So the author says, why did Antichrist Pope John the 23rd? And by the way, dear reader, and dear listener, when you follow in this reading, you will see that I mention every time, or most of the times, a lot of the times when I read Pope, that I mention first the word Antichrist. Now you can read this book from the first to the last page, and I don't think that you will find any Antichrist note as I read it here, but I add that. That is my artistic freedom that I use as a Protestant, because I protest the Pope. And if I were to write a book, I can tell you every time when I wrote a sentence like, why did Pope John the 23rd say blah, 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 I would write it, why did Antichrist Pope John the 23rd say blah, blah, blah. So that's just my personal interpretation. So don't look for that word in the original text. I am adding that. I already did that for the last 460 pages in this book, but I'm going to tell you now at least that I'm going to add
going,
that.
brother.
Why did Antichrist Pope John the 23rd say, quote, the mark of Cain is stamped upon our foreheads. Across the centuries, our brother Abel has lain in blood, which we drew, question mark. This quote-unquote mark, says the Antichrist, is quote-unquote upon their quote-unquote foreheads. Now, the Pope's statement was supposedly made in relation to the failure of the Catholic Church to speak up against the Holocaust. But might it not be applied in a more profound sense? The story of Cain and Abel, the sons of Adam and Eve, is about obedience, and the one hand, and the story of Cain and Abel, the sons of Adam and Eve, is about obedience on the one hand and disobedience or rebellion on the other. Abel obeyed and brought the required sacrifice, while Cain disobeyed and offered his own sacrifice. In place of vicarious filiae dei,
That's right, the vicar.
Yeah, in place of what was required. Thus, the mark of Cain is a mark of or sign of disobedience. It is a mark that will be set up, quote unquote, in place of or vicariously, some important requirement of true religion. A word from the Da Vinci Code. By the way, Brett, did you ever read the book from Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code, or watch the movie?
Did. I watched the movie, yes. Mm-hmm. Sure did.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't even remember that I watched the movie. I probably did. It is with Tom Hanks, isn't it?
I forget the name of this guy.
Yeah, the guy who also plays in Forrest Gump.
I think you're right.
Yeah. In Forrest Gump. So
I never watched Forrest Gump, so I
well,
I don't watch all these movies, man.
No, but that's a movie you as an American should watch.
Okay.
Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
Jeez, I don't know. I've heard a lot of funny things about that movie. I just thought, whatever.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
It is.
Okay. I enjoyed that movie, of course. Sometimes there are movies that you can enjoy. Okay. And this is really a laughable one. He meets Elvis Presley. He meets JFK. He meets so many things and people. Anyway, on pages 232 to 233 on the Da Vinci Code, Dan Brown writes, quote, originally, Langdon said, Christianity honored the Jewish Sabbath of Saturday, but Constantine shifted it to coincide with the pagans' veneration day of the sun. He paused, grinning. To this day, most churchgoers attend services on Sunday morning with no idea that they are on account of the pagan sun god's weekly tribute, SUN, Sunday.
And what's today?
SUN Sunday, I
Yeah,
think.
it's morning here in
Yeah, the 3rd
rural
of June.
America.
Yeah, that's right. The 3rd of June, Sunday today.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, the author asks, was Dan Brown right? That Constantine changed the Sabbath to Sunday with the help of the decretal of Antichrist Pope Sylvester, who ruled between 314 and 337 AD, is well known to the student of history. Interestingly, while the Roman Catholic Church has disputed much of the Da Vinci Code, it has not challenged Dan Brown's assertion for the change of the Sabbath day. In fact, the Catholic Church readily admits to Brown's contention. Quote, she, speaking of the Roman Catholic Church, took the pagan Sunday and made it the Christian Sunday. Thus, the pagan SUN Sunday dedicated to Balder, the name for the sun god Baal, became the Christian Sunday sacred to Jesus. Unquote. Therefore, we have to understand, of course, that the Roman Catholic Church teaches another Jesus. They teach the Jesus of Babylon, Tammuz. Now, according to UNESCO, Balder was the Scandinavian name for the ancient Babylonian sun god called the God of Truth and Light, also known as Baal, Baalim, Bel, B-E-L, or Bull, from which we get the Masonic term Jabulon. The last syllable on in Jabulon is the name of the Egyptian sun god. The Church of Rome says that this same Sunday, in honor of Balder, the pagan god of truth of light, is now sacred to Jesus. How could a day in veneration of the SUN sun god Balder, aka Baal, whose worship is strictly forbidden in the Christian Bible, and see among other parts 2 Kings chapter 10 verse 26, become a day quote-unquote sacred to Jesus? By what abracadabra did the pagan Sunday dedicated to Balder become the Christian Sunday sacred to Jesus? By the oracles of Sibyl? Interesting question. I think the use of the choosing of his words, by what abracadabra did the pagan Sunday become the Christian Sunday, is the same question that you can ask, by what abracadabra does the piece of bread in the host become the full body and soul, blood and flesh, divinity and humanity of our Lord Jesus Christ? Because they are just using abracadabra. They are just using a Latin formula, hoc est enim corpus meum, the priest shouts, and with that he transfers bread into the living Christ. Well, even less abracadabra apparently is needed for the Roman Catholic Church to change the seventh-day Sabbath, Saturday, to the Sunday, the first day of the week. And even on the danger of repeating myself, we over here in Europe have it as a law that since the 1970s, Monday is the first day of the week. That automatically makes SUN Sunday the seventh day of the week. So the Roman Church can say, well, you here in Europe, when you want to venerate your Lord on the seventh day of the week, go ahead, because I changed it and the seventh day is Sunday. And he laughed up his sleeve.
That's right. You can have it all.
You know, in the book of Daniel, it is said that the Antichrist thinks to change times and laws. We, of course, are living under a first Julian and now Gregorian Romish calendar, which is adhering to the sun instead of the moon, because we are living in a heliocentric system according to the Antichrist, and not to a geocentric system according to the Bible. Mm-hmm. And he changed the calendar, but he never changed the days. I can, for the love of God, not come to where that happened. You or somebody else has to look that up. I mean, maybe during my reading you have the time to look that up on Google. I read about it. There was at least one nation in this world that tried to impose on their people a 10-day week, so that they actually changed the days as God ordained them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They said, no, our week lasts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. A decimal system. I don't know what country that was anymore. I know that I read that. I forgot to take a note, but I took a mental note. That's why I remember this right here, right now. There are so many ways that the Antichrist tries, and that Satan, through the Antichrist, I should say, tries to confuse the people. Yeah? And that's why the Bible warns in different places that we should not get confused. We should not, do they say that there?
Mhm.
Help me there, Brett. I don't come to the word right now. Take heed that no man deceive you.
Yeah,
that we
that's
should
right.
be deceived. That we should not be taken by our nose and, like an ox, and led around in
Led to the
circles
slaughter, yeah.
and led to the slaughter without knowing us. So, I mean, the Bible warns us on several occasions of that. So, but even not the Julian and not the Gregorian calendar changed one thing. They never touched the 7-day week. Yeah, that remained the same. And even though I think it was in 1582, 11 days were taken out of the calendar in the month of October after the next day that follows what the 15th, but it was still the next day. So I don't know, it was from Thursday to Friday or from Friday to Saturday, I don't know. But what didn't change, they took 11 days out, but they didn't change the flow of the days. So they changed the dates by leaving out 11 days. Okay, that's one thing. But they did not change the flow of days. They did not change the flow of the 7-day week circle. And that's why I think it is in the book of Daniel, where it says that the Antichrist will think to change times and laws. Why does he think that? Because with his presumed authority, and let's make sure that you understand that correctly. It's about the assumed authority, because he doesn't have any authority. All authority in those things comes from God, and he is not authorized from God. He is authorized from the devil. With his assumed authority, he thinks to teach us other weekdays and other circles, solar circles instead of lunar circles, probably even other seasons, like the teaching of global warming, which is the biggest BS I've ever heard in my life. And people fall for it, hook, line, and sinker everywhere.
They
because
do, yeah.
They just can't think for themselves anymore.
Well, I found it. It is a French Republican calendar, and it was brought about by the French Revolution, it looks like, or in that time period during the French Revolution.
That's possible, yeah. That's possible.
Yeah, and they go by decade. What did they call it? A decade?
Decimal. Because of the
no, they actually call it a decade here, or week. 10-day week is called a decade.
Yeah, 10-day week. A decade, yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Decade because 10.
Yeah, that's
I know.
right.
I knew that.
Wow.
I didn't know when or where it was anymore, but I knew
that would
that
make sense because this history of the French Revolution is just really it's really out there. I mean, it really takes a while to study this to kind of get the idea of what was going on there, because just the way things have been gauged to World War I and World War II, and we're just in tune with a whole different kind of I don't even know how to put this. I mean, it's just, when you study history going way back like this, it just, everything changes. All the words, the definitions, you have to look them up again and verify what they really mean, because they changed. They've changed a lot of things. So, yeah, it's very interesting to study history, and it takes a great deal of time, doesn't it, Jörg?
Well, I can tell you, Brett, that without a profound knowledge on the Jesuit order, you will never be able to understand the French Revolution.
Yeah, good point, Jörg. Good
because
point.
the French Revolution was fomented by the Illuminati. The Illuminati were at that time abolished Jesuit order. And the
Yes.
Jesuit order are the military government of the Roman Catholic Church, to say it in this kind of words. But the French Revolution was absolutely anti-Catholic, was absolutely
Yes. So
anti-Bible.
on its face, it appears like it's totally anti-Jesuit, but in reality, it isn't.
Yeah.
That's
the French
the weird thing
Revolution
about
is
it.
a perfect example of Hegelian dialectic.
Yeah, thank you.
You have the old rule of France, of the Gallic Catholic Church. Make sure that you understand what the Gallic Catholic Church is. We spoke about that earlier. If you don't remember that, then go back in the archives of the readings of Codeword Barbelon. It will pop up somewhere. We spoke about the Gallic Church, so it was about the abolishment of Catholicism. It was about the abolishment of the rule of theocracy, of the rule of a God-inspired reign in France. That, of course, was not inspired by the God of the Bible, but by the God of this world, Satan. That's another question. And the antithesis was the rule of man, the republic. And these two clashed together, and what came out of it was the synthesis. That was the Fifth Republic, as we call it today in France. Because when you look to France today, you can still see the afterworkings of the French Revolution. France today is a republic. They call it the Fifth Republic. After the time of the French Revolution, for a short time they fell back into the emperor stuff because Napoleon was emperor even after the French Revolution. Yeah,
that's right.
So why are you abolishing kings on the one hand and then putting on an emperor on the other hand? But the difference with Napoleon was, of course, he was not crowned by the Pope. No, he took the crown out of the hands of the Pope and put it on his own head.
Yeah.
There are very interesting pictures to that to be found on the internet. I think it was Pope Pius VII who re-established the Jesuit order in 1814 and who also, some years earlier, wanted to crown Napoleon, but Napoleon crowned himself. So he put on the crown on himself. Then France lived a time with these emperor stuff, and then they came into becoming a republic. And then the republic was infiltrated by the Jesuit order, and the country was split in half at the end of the 19th century with the Dreyfus affair. That I don't know we spoke of in this book, but we surely spoke of it in the book Behind the Dictators, which you just uploaded on your channel, the Dreyfus affair. And I spoke of that also in the Secret History of the Jesuits, which you, by the time that this video is published, will have uploaded long ago on your channel again, probably, and I probably too. I go extensively on that, on the Dreyfus affair, between 1894 and the beginning of the 20th century in France. And the result was that after the First World War, they became a republic, and today they call it the Fifth Republic, what is established after the Second World War, of which, among others, Giscard d'Estaing was the head of the republic at that time. And today you have a president and you have a prime minister in France. Unlike in America, there you only have a president, you don't have a prime minister beneath that. So that's a kind of a different republic than the United States of America. In the United States of America, all the power is concentrated in the office of the president. In France, the president only has a more or less representative status, and the political power is left to the prime minister. Just like in England, where instead of a president, you have a king or a queen. Like in most of the quote-unquote democratic monarchies that we have in Europe here today. But okay, let's not go too far away from all this stuff. But just remember that the Roman Catholic Church teaches another Jesus, and so the Roman Catholic Church teaches another Sabbath by taking away the Sabbath from the seventh day of the week to the first day of the week. And here in Europe, they even have the audacity to change the week in that way that they say the first day of the week is Monday, by law. Okay? Do you have any more comments on this, Brett?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it just makes me wonder when they'll do that here. Probably never, because there's so many stick in the muds around here. What I'm more concerned about is when they take away the guns from all the people.
Maybe all these different agendas will come together and will be enforced as one.
Yeah, that's
Sunday
right.
worship,
I think
guns
that's
taken
probably
away,
it. Yeah.
the Constitution officially put aside, because they put the Constitution already aside after the Civil War, which nobody understands except for the people who followed our reading of Codeword Barbelon. But most Americans born and living today think they really live under a Constitution.
Yeah, that's right.
They live under.
There's other books too that people can read, and there's exposés on it, like this one. What is this one by this really interesting author? He did that book Transformation of the Republic, and I'm trying to remember his name. Oh boy, shame on me. I don't have that in front of me. But he also did another book which I have.
Wilcox.
Yes, Wilcox. Yes.
C. Wilcox.
C.T. Wilcox. Yeah.
C.T. Wilcox.
Yeah. He's got some really interesting books on that subject too. So I'm sure there are other people that know about it, just not many, Jörg.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Fine how to see how two brains work better than just one, eh?
Oh, yeah. Well, even when it's early in the morning, my brain doesn't work quite right, but...
Oh, it's okay today. You help me out with
no
one
problem.
thing, I help you out with one thing.
Exactly.
So let's continue here on the middle of page 462, where the author says, now, there are those, like Jesuit-trained Dr. Samuel Bacchiocchi of Andrews University. I thought Andrews University was a Seventh-day Adventist university.
That could be. I have no idea.
Well, I read that book in German, Ökumene und Weltregierung, Ecumenism and World Government, by Dr. Kobialka.
Oh.
And he was trained at Andrews University in the United States. And I thought that was a Seventh-day Adventist learning institute.
I'll look it up.
So reading here that Jesuit-trained Dr. Samuel Bacchiocchi of Andrews University would be meaning that this Jesuit-trained doctor teaches on a Seventh-day Adventist university learning institution.
Okay, I'm on their website. Faith and History is Seventh-day Adventist. That is correct.
St. Andrews, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And that's the only Andrews University you have in the United States, don't you?
Yeah, I don't think it's St. Andrews. It's Andrews University.
Yeah, or Andrews, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Andrews.
Without the
Saint.
St. Andrews in this one.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't say St. Andrews here in the book. I just thought it was St. Andrews, or it's Andrews University.
That's correct.
But I know that I read that book from Dr. Kobialka because he had he was lecturing there too, and he wrote that book. And so I'm quite astonished to read that Jesuit-trained Dr. Samuel Bacchiocchi of Andrews University, if that's a Seventh-day Adventist university, some Seventh-day Adventists should again reconsider joining that quote-unquote church.
Yes.
Okay? Now, the sentence again. Now there are those, like Jesuit-trained Dr. Samuel Bacchiocchi of Andrews University, who say that the above view of the origin of Sunday's introduction into the church is wrong. Professor Bacchiocchi asserts that this historical change began almost 2 centuries before Constantine promulgated his Sunday law, for reasons to do with anti-Semitism. And this we can read in Samuel Bacchiocchi's work From Sabbath to Sunday, from the Pontifical Gregorian University. That's the highest institution of learning the Jesuits have in Rome, Italy. Bacchiocchi, who claims to be Protestant, that fits that he works at a SDA university.
Oh, yeah.
Studied for 5 years under the Jesuits at the Pontifical Gregorian University, founded by the first Jesuit General Ignatius of Loyola. Like I said, this is the prime studying university the Jesuits have in Rome, the Pontifical Gregorian University. Yeah. Oh, man, what a can of worms did we open here.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
However, that his argument is spurious, to say the least, and demonstrably inaccurate is seen from the following historical sources. The voices of all reputable historians are unanimous on this, that the official transference of the day of worship from the seventh day to the first day took place in AD 321, under the auspices of Emperor Constantine the Great, aided and abetted by Antichrist, quote-unquote, Pope Sylvester. Now, why in the hell all of a sudden, Jörg, are you saying quote-unquote Pope Sylvester? What's wrong with you? Well, what's wrong with me is that I read Luther's work and that I read a few other works in which I understood that the very first pope that could be called pope is the pope that was made pope by Emperor Phocas in 606 AD, when the Bishop of Rome has been
Yes.
given the spiritual authority over the Eastern and the Western Church, and by their becoming the Pontifex Maximus, the bitch brother between the East and the West. Bang! That's why I say, quote-unquote, Pope. All the popes before Boniface III in 606 were not popes, but were just bishops of Rome.
Right.
That, of course, is something the Roman Catholic Church will never tell you, because they would lose their quote-unquote apostolic succession, which is one of the pillars they built their superstitious and idolatrous religion on.
Yep.
Yeah?
That's the facts, Jörg. You got it.
That's why I say quote-unquote Pope Sylvester. So whenever you go into any history books and you read of popes before 606, scrap the word Pope and put in the Bishop of Rome. That's what he was. Before 321 AD, the author continues, the vast majority of Christians that were not Gnostics that's an oxymoron, right?
Yeah.
When you're a Christian, you cannot be a Gnostic. And when you're a Gnostic, you cannot be a Christian. So the one absolutely excludes the other. The vast majority of Christians that were not Gnostics, so we are talking about real Christians then, probably, kept the seventh-day Sabbath. In fact, contrary to what Dr. Bitchute claims, anti-Semitism had very little to do with the change of the day of worship from the seventh day to the first day of the week. To put the cause of the change of the Sabbath down to the earlier Christians' fear of persecution on account of the anti-Semitic association of the Sabbath with Jews, it is to deliberately hide the true reason for the change, veiled sun sun worship, the Christianization of a day in honor of Balder or Baal. This is admitted by Rome. Here's the text of Constantine's famous Sunday law of 321 AD. Quote, on the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest, and let all workshops be closed. In the country, however, persons engaged in agriculture may freely and lawfully continue their pursuits, because it often happens that another day is not so suitable for grain sowing or for vine planting, lest by neglecting the proper moment for such operations, the bounty of heaven should be lost. Given the seventh-day march, Crispus and Constantine being consuls. Unquote. It is important to notice that only people in the cities were required to follow Sunday law. As such, Sunday was never universally kept as the Sabbath, even under Constantine's Sunday law from AD 321. And that was almost 2 centuries after Dr. Bitchute claims all or most Christians were keeping Sunday due to anti-Semitic attitudes. Now I'm going to tell you something that you maybe don't want to hear. There is an agenda out there, and you can watch videos on YouTube and anywhere you want, and you can study that for yourselves, to build city over city and mega city over mega city, and get the people off the land in the city.
Oh, yeah.
Urbanization, as we have learned from some 50, 60 years ago, is dead. People are being put into cities. They are doing that on so many levels that you can't even imagine. Here in Europe, they have gone into the next phase by all of a sudden damming the diesel engines. For the last 30 years, people were buying diesel engines because they were cheaper and they were better. And they made laws to restrict the exhaust gases that come out of the diesel to make them better and better. And now all of a sudden, with this Volkswagen, the first company that fell with this betrayal they apparently did, by manipulating the software on the exhaust data, and other companies follow suit because they all do the same, they are damming the diesel here. In Hamburg, the city where I come from, there are the first two streets now closed for diesel engines that have not the absolute newest diesel engine up to the Euro 6 norm, we call it here in Europe. And every diesel that is older than, I think, 2 or 3 years up, at this moment on the market is not allowed to drive through those streets. That's the first that stops. Now, get the people from the land away, because they did that already all over the world with their quote-unquote globalization, because all the little farmers are dying out. But the big farmers take over. They are becoming companies. They are becoming factories. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like we speak of meat factories, and that's actually what they are. Not only for chickens, not only for swine, but also for beef and all the other stuff. These animals will be held in big factories, raised there just for meat for the people, and that's it. And the local farmer will die out. The land will die out, and the cities will grow, will expand, and everybody will be put in the cities. Individual traffic is being forbidden. You only have traffic by bus, by train, and anything that is just quote-unquote public transportation. But individual transportation will be outlawed. Can you imagine that in America with your big fancy SUVs all over the country right now?
Yeah.
I tell you, it's coming. And when you look at China, they have built some mega cities out there somewhere. Then everybody asks himself, what the fuck are they doing here? Why are they building the cities where nobody is living right now that can actually host millions of people? They will come. That is their agenda. They will put all the people in cities, and that is exactly the same, and people don't see that, what Nimrod did after the flood, when he built the very first city and surrounded the city with fences and gave the people, quote-unquote, security of all the wild animals. And what did God do with Babylon in that time? I don't have to tell you. You know your Bible yourself, I hope. But this is again the agenda that comes again now. Everything wrapped up in the cities, close down the land, and by that control every movement. I mean, we are living in a controlled society over here in Europe. You cannot believe in the United States of America. When you are going somewhere out there on the streets of London in Great Britain, you cannot set one step in that city without being
monitored. Yeah, that's right.
Monitored by a camera.
That's right.
And here in the country where I live, it is also going rampant in that way. On the highways, they place more cameras. You know, they don't have flash radar traps anymore to see if you are speeding. No, they are measuring the way that you are driving from this point on the highway to that point on the highway. And when in between that you have an average speed that is above the allowed speed, they have a track confirmation that you speeded in that way. There are ways out that I know. When I was in Antwerp, I was leaving the city of Antwerp, going into the country to visit a client, where you have this on normal roads, where they told me, I hope that you didn't breach the overtake. How do they say, when you're not allowed to overtake a car? How do you say that?
Well, we say pass.
Yeah, to pass. It is forbidden to pass a car. I hope you didn't pass a car there, because they have cameras so far that they know that that car was before you. When you come out on the next point before that car, you are in big trouble. They don't even see the perpetrating moment when you pass that other car, but they see that at one point you came in behind that car, and the next control point you come out before that car. How is that possible otherwise that you've passed them?
Mm-hmm.
This is the way that they are doing right here in Belgium. In Antwerp, you can't get into the city if you don't have the right number plate, if you don't have the right quote-unquote diesel engine or another engine. If you go there, they take a photograph of your number plate and you will be sent a fine automatically to your home. Just because you were there in Antwerp. This is how strong it is already here in Europe, where I live over here now.
Yep.
You guys take care of what's coming to United States of America, I can tell you.
Agenda
Really.
21. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't even call it Agenda 21, but this agenda to build these mega cities, to have people under control, you know. What did Zbigniew Brzezinski say, Brad?
Oh,
There was a
boy.
time when it was easier to
Control
control a million people than to kill a million
Yeah,
people.
that's right.
Today, it is so much more easier. It is so
Infinitely
much
easier, yeah.
infinitely easier, thank you.
Yep.
Infinitely easier to kill a million people than to control a million people.
That's it.
But when they have these mega cities, they can control you. They control you by your iPhone. They control you by your RFID chip that you will be wearing, whether you like it or not. They will, and they don't have to worry about personal transformation anymore. How did I say that?
Personal transportation. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like cars or anything, because there are no cars anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
You just have to go. You just have to go on a tram, like, you know, in San
Oh
Francisco.
no, there'll be Google cars, Jörg.
What?
Remember the Google car? You just get in and it drives you to where you need to go.
Yeah, the only
Like to
cars
the concentration camp.
will be cars probably that drive by their own on their own.
That's right.
And you will only have means of public transportation, you know, like trams, like you have in San Francisco. There, these, you know, we have this over here in Europe also. It's a train in the city, and buses, and all that stuff. And that's what you're gonna get, and that's what you're gonna wake up to one day if you don't prepare yourself for that. Yeah. So how do I come to that? Because of the quote unquote Sunday and Sunday law. Well, when you have all the people jammed in a city, like in a big concentration camp, and you can control them all, you can see what they are doing on Saturday, and you can see what they are doing on Sunday, right? And you can just pull those out on Sunday who are not doing what you want them to do, right?
Yeah. That's right.
1984 by George Orwell was a joke compared to what's coming really on the people on this earth. And there's one thing that can save you from all this BS that I just told you, and that is Jesus Christ. He is the only way. As he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father but through me. Therefore, you have to accept first Jesus Christ to come to the Father. Because if you don't come to the Father through Jesus Christ, you come to the Antichrist. And that means you come to the devil. And that means your life will be lost forever. You will be burning in hell. You will be resurrected for the second death, for the judgment, and be thrown into the lake of fire, together with Satan and all the others. Yes, all of a sudden Jörg teaches hell. And why? Well, because I also teach salvation. You should never mention the one without the other. God does not have any pleasure of anyone being lost in the lake of fire. He wants everybody to repent and to come to him through his Son. And he gives us chances. Many, many, many chances. He puts out a book that we can read, that is the Bible. He puts out authors like P.D. Stewart, like Michael de Semlyen, like James Edgar Wiley, like Henry Grattan Guinness, All these people that do writings, that do write books to tell you where it is all coming from, where it is all going to. And when you are being so gullible and ignorant to ignore this, then you will pay the price. Let me tell you, ignorance is no bliss. I think we should even stop the reading for today, Brett.
Yeah, and I have a Bible quote that comes to mind when you were doing your talk there on getting to know Christ, and of course getting to know the Scriptures, and they go hand in hand. And this one is from James chapter 1, verse 19 through 27. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For wrath of a man, for the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. Wherefore, lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls. But be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own selves. For if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For if for he beholdeth himself and goeth his way, and straightway forgetteth what manner of man he was. But whoso looketh into the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, he being not forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. If any man among you seem to be religious, and brideth not his tongue, but deceiveth his own heart, this man, his religion is vain. Pure religion and undefiled before God is the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a really good one. I just thought
Yeah,
I'd read the whole thing instead of just a verse.
Yeah, that's nice. I don't like it when here and there a verse is taken out of the Bible. I appreciate it much more when you take the time reading the whole, or at least half of the chapter.
Yeah, that's right.
And
It
we have
makes a
to
lot more
understand.
sense.
Yes, and we have to understand, Brett. James is a half brother of Jesus Christ,
Mm-hmm.
so we should really listen to what he has to say, right?
Oh, yeah, it's one of the best books in the Bible, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Always loved James.
So I think we started the recording a little later than quarter past, so we still have some 10 minutes or so to go to fulfill the hour.
Sure.
Is that correct?
I think
So
so.
then I will continue. But I want to leave at this moment, at least, the mental note in the people who are watching this video or listening to what we have to say here, that they really should do their own research in this regard, and always study at the basics first. And the basics is the Bible, the 1611 authorized version of the King James Bible, and nothing else. That is the only true word that you can get, and go from there. Go from there and study books like Romanism and the Reformation from Henry Grattan Guinness. Go from there and read The History of Protestantism by James Atkin Wiley. Go from there and read All Roads Lead to Rome by Michael de Semlyen, Rulers of Evil from Tupper Saucy, Codeword Barbelon by P.D. Stewart. Even follow the reading of Tom Friess that he did. Don't read the book for yourself, but go to First Amendment Radio and listen to the 99 broadcasts Tom Friess did the reading of the Global Vatican. And read the book from James Atkin Wiley, Rome and Civil Liberty. And even C.T. Wilcox, Transformation of the Republic. And all these kind of books. But first, always study the Bible. Study the Word of God, that you have a strong foundation of belief and of conscience that you can start from when you read these other books. That you will see through the lies the devil throws at you all the time. Now, on the bottom here on page 463, the author continues by mentioning a certain G. Hectvedt. That G. Hectvedt was a respected historian, as he says here, and from the name and that he was mentioned in the Illustret Kirchehistorie, I make up that he is probably a Swedish person. And this G. Hectvedt explains the motivation for Constantine's new law. Quote, Constantine labored at this time untiringly to unite the worshippers of the old and the new faith in one religion. Now, what is the old faith in this regard? We have to understand this. He speaks about the pagan Roman religion. Yeah, the multiple gods that they had, the veneration of the sun god, and the multiple gods that they had in paganism, in Roman paganism. And the new faith, that is Christianity, that came up out of Judea after the crucifixion of Christ and was spread through, among others, but most and for all, the Apostle Paul, all through Minor Asia, Asia Minor, and also until Rome, because he wrote the book of Romans. All his laws, the quote continues, and contrivances are aimed at promoting this amalgamation of religions. Amalgamation of religions, that means nothing else but usurpation, to usurp Roman Roman pagan religion with the quote-unquote Christianity, or better said the other way around, to suck in Christianity and give the pagan Roman religion a new mantle to look at,
Yep, to mix it up, amalgamation, yep. Mix it all up.
His injunction that the day of the sun should be a general rest day was characteristic of this standpoint, unquote from Hectvedt. Anti-Semitism was not an issue until under the reign of Constantine, and between Constantius, that's one of the sons of Constantine. Between 337 and 362, the persecutions of the Jews reached such a height, unquote. This is taken from the Jewish Encyclopedia under the calendar article. That was in the 4th century. It is fascinating that while the Roman Catholic Church does not in any way seek to hide the fact that it was Antichrist Pope Sylvester, and it should read Antichrist Bishop of Rome Sylvester, aided by Constantine, who changed the day, there still are those who will try to argue otherwise. I heard one such strained argument from a Dr. McGee on WMCA radio in New York. That is a Christian station. Now, they call themselves that. Is it a Christian station? That's something else. On October 1st, 2006. Dr. John Vernon McGee is a Presbyterian minister based in Pasadena, California, and is the founder of the, quote, Through the Bible Radio Ministries, unquote. This man, talking of Dr. John Vernon McGee, with great eloquence and conviction denied that the Church of Rome changed the Sabbath from the seventh day to Sunday. He asserted that the Sabbath was, quote-unquote, never changed, but merely, quote, came to an end, unquote, when Christ rose from the grave on Sunday. And that since that day, Sunday has been observed as a day of celebration by Christians. This view is clearly refuted by all the historians. Is that so? Brett, I cannot count the comments that I had when I was teaching.
Gonna say. I see them too.
When I was teaching on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And the people said, the Lord's day is Sunday because our Lord rose on Sunday. Did he rise on Sunday? Interesting question, huh?
I don't think so.
Did he really rise on Sunday? Well, the question first and for all is, when was he crucified? Was he
that's
crucified
right.
on Friday? Well, then the Bible says already in the Law and the Prophets that he rested in his grave for 72 hours. When you add from Friday at any given moment 72 hours, you never come up on Sunday for the resurrection.
That's right.
So something is very wrong in that picture they paint for you. And I can tell you where the real picture is to be found. When you go to my reading, and Brett will probably put this up on the link in the description box of this video. When you go to my reading of Babylon Mystery Religion by Ralph Woodrow, there is, I think in the latter part, I think it is chapter 19 or chapter 20, it speaks about 3 days and 3 nights. And then you will learn that what you have maybe never even heard before, that the crucifixion took place on a Wednesday, and that the next day, Thursday, was a Sabbath. It was a high Sabbath. It was the Passover feast. And then, of course, you had Friday, which was preparation for the weekly Sabbath. That was Saturday. So when Jesus died on Wednesday afternoon and was in the grave for 3 days, he was there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and rose when the sun went down on the Sabbath on Saturday, and the first day of the week began, because the first day of the week begins with the sunset on Saturday. Sunday begins with sunset. That's right, not with sunrise and not at midnight, as you are told, but the days start biblically with sunset. And when Mary came to the grave the next morning, the Sunday morning, she found the grave already empty. So he didn't rise Sunday morning, he already was gone. He was out of Dodge since long already. So did he rise on Sunday? Well, technically maybe, yeah, but then it's the very first moments after the sunset on the Sabbath. A very, very interesting question. And now all these people who say, but now the Sabbath is, Jesus is the Sabbath, and the Lord's Day is now Sunday, I don't find any biblical confirmation of those allegations, I call them. God made it very, very clear what the seventh day is. I mean, you only have to go back to the very first book of the Bible, Genesis. And there it says chronologically what God did on the first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, the sixth day, and what he did on the seventh day. There was no seventh day before God created that seventh day. And he created that seventh day in commemoration for us to remember the whole of creation that he did in 6 days. As it is said in the Bible, in 6 days the Lord created the world, on the seventh day he rested from all the work that he had done. And that's why we should not do any work on the seventh day either. Even today, we should venerate the creation on the seventh day. That's what we should do. We should read and study the Bible. We should read and study the Word of God. We should embrace ourselves with the love that he gives us. So it is very clear written in the book of Genesis how the seventh day started or came into existence. God created the seventh day. Then in Exodus, God told the Israelites to remember the seventh day. Never forget, that is the day that I ordained for you. The Sabbath was made for man, not man was made for the Sabbath, as the Bible says. He repeats that there. He repeats it later in another chapter in Exodus, and he repeats it another chapter later, I think, in Deuteronomy, in the 5th book of Moses. And there are many places in the Bible where those are repeated. But I can see not one sentence in the Bible where it says, I changed the seventh day I changed Sabbath from the seventh day of the week to the first day of the week because my son Jesus Christ rose on the first day of the week. Now this is the day that you should bow down, go to church, and follow Jesus Christ on Sunday. I don't see any sentence in the whole Bible from Genesis to Revelation where you can read that. It is just the interpretation of man. But the Bible interprets itself if you have a correct Bible, like the King James Bible. And the Bible is not open for personal interpretation. No scripture, no prophecy is open for personal interpretation, but the Bible interprets and explains itself. But when you, mere man, poor little wretched sinner that you are, take works into your own hand and say, what I think of the Bible, that is the truth, well, then you have it your way. I'll have it the way my God wants to walk on. And that's his way. So it's his way or it's Satan's way. It's the small path that leads to salvation, or it is the broad road that leads to destruction. Your choice. But don't come tell me that, like this guy says here, that the how does he say that here? He asserted that the Sabbath was never changed but merely came to an end when Christ rose from the grave on Sunday, and that since that day, Sunday has been observed as a day of celebration by Christians. This view, the author says, is clearly refuted by all the historians, and it is clearly refuted by the Bible itself. I don't care for any historian. I care for the Word of God itself. And with this, I'm going to close the meeting for today on the reading of Codeword Barbelon in chapter 46. And I will leave the final message, the closing remarks of this broadcast, of this recording, to Brother Brett. Maranatha.
Thank you, Jörg. And we are looking forward to come back next time for the next part of this chapter, the Mark of Cain, the Mark of Rome, and the Da Vinci Code. And we'll see you then. God bless you and bye for now.
That for the first time in human history, for the first time in all of human history, almost all of mankind is politically awake. And these new and old major powers face still yet another novel reality, in some respects unprecedented. And it is that while the lethality of their power is greater than ever, their capacity to impose control over the politically awakened masses of the world is at a historical low. I once put it rather pungently, and I was flattered that the British Foreign Secretary repeated this, as follows. Namely, in earlier times, it was easier to control 1 million people, literally. It was easier to control 1 million people than physically to kill 1 million people. Today, it is infinitely easier to kill 1 million people than to control 1 million people. It is easier to kill than to control.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict. And I believe that we've come horribly off track in the years since the fall of the Soviet Union. And we're starting now in the 21st century, which I believe strongly is a crisis both of our church, a crisis of our faith, a crisis of the West, and a crisis of capitalism.
His son Jesus is here in our midst. His bride, the church, is honored to host an event affirming the dignity of the human person and the sacredness of all human life.
I think Russia is no longer a communist state, first of all. That's very important to realize. It hasn't yet defined itself, however, effectively as a democracy. It is still uncertain.
We're at the very beginning stages of a very brutal and bloody conflict, of which if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, if the people in this room and the people in the church do not bind together and really form what I feel is an aspect of the church militant, to really be able to not just stand with our beliefs, but to fight for our beliefs against this new barbarity that's starting, that we will literally eradicate everything that we've been bequeathed over the last 2,025 years.
You didn't mention the president by name, but it was hard not to conclude that that's who you were referring to. Is that fair?
I was certainly referring to the threats that we are now facing with this stated goals of this administration, which would upset the last 70 years of a new world order which was established after World War II. 70 years based on human rights, respect for the law, free trade, all of the things and aspects of this world order that took place after one of the most horrific, terrible wars in history, and I'm for maintaining it.
We are grateful to be citizens of one nation under God, who acclaim this evening that in God we trust. Bless our two candidates, our benefactors, and those whom the L. Smith Foundation has been honored to serve for 7 decades. Guide us safely home, both this evening and for all eternity, through Christ our Lord. Amen.